Back in 2015, I was casually getting back into coasters and looking through some pages on Facebook. Then a bomb dropped that caught everyone's attention. Suddenly, we saw renderings of this massive wooden coaster that wound up and down a mountain, and on top of that, it would have a launched lift hill. All this would be going down at Dollywood. They had slowly been building their coaster collection over the last 2 decades, from Tennessee Tornado in 1999, Thunderhead in 2004, Mystery Mine in 2007, Wild Eagle in 2012, and then Fire Chaser Express in 2014. Continuing their recent 2-year gap between coaster editions, this launched wooden coaster would be called Lightning Rod, and would be RMC's latest creation, set to open in March 2016. For such an innovative coaster, that opening date would prove to be unrealistic. This was a problem for me because I had a road trip planned for mid-June, and Dollywood was set to be right in the middle of it. The delay stretched from days to weeks to months. In late May, Dollywood started giving people tickets to ride it as part of a technical rehearsal. This was hit or miss. Sometimes they would be running it, sometimes they wouldn't be. By the time I left for that road trip, they had been running technical rehearsals every day, so I felt pretty good about it. And on the first day of my trip, while I was at Cedar Point, Dollywood announced that Lightning Rod was officially open. This was June 13th, 2016. I got my first ride 2 days later on June 15th, and it was immediately in my top 5. I struck out on my 2018 attempt to ride it, but I did return in the spring of 2019 to get 3 more rides, and I got a much more comprehensive feel of the ride in the front and the back, and formed some new opinions, not all of which were good. This is my long way of explaining that as much as I love this coaster, it's not a perfect ride, especially when comparing the way it's running now to the way it ran when it first opened. These are my pros and cons of Lightning Rod. Before I start, let me give a huge shout out to Coaster Fanatics for letting me use his POV of Lightning Rod. I'll put his channel in the card above and in the description below. If you want to see some great POVs, check out his channel. The first pro is the fact that it's launched. This sets it apart from all other RMCs, and all other coasters for that matter. There isn't any other wooden coaster out there that does this, and you're hard pressed to find a launched lift hill on many steel coasters either. Lightning Rod has a great hot rod theme, and having a launched lift hill is a thrilling and fitting way to kick the ride off. A simple chain lift would just seem wrong when you're talking about high performance cars. The first con is the way the launch has changed over the years. Since 2016, Dollywood and RMC have had to make adjustments to get the coaster to run more consistently, and there's no doubt that the launch in its opening year was a lot more powerful than it is now. When I rode it in 2016, I was put in the first car, row 2. At the top of the launch lift, I got a powerful pop of ejector airtime. In 2019, I decided to sit in the same exact seat to compare, and I got absolutely no airtime. The ride is so big that the rest of the ride didn't really suffer because of this, but it's still disappointing because the experience at the top of the lift was so much better before. People who didn't get to ride it in 2016 will never know, but having had that experience, I can't help but to compare and be a little bit disappointed now. The second pro is the first drop. I love a big, steep, straight RMC drop, and Lightning Rod definitely has it, standing at 165 feet at a 73-degree angle. It could stand to be a little steeper because most of the other RMCs are closer to or beyond 80 degrees, but it's plenty to toss you out of your seat. Compare this to Ghost Rider at 51 degrees and Goliath at 61 degrees. It's miles better than those, even if it doesn't quite stack up with Iron Rattler's 81 degrees or Iron Gwazi's 91 degrees. Another great thing about this drop is the momentum that it has coming over the top. Some RMCs like Twisted Colossus and Iron Rattler absolutely crawl over the crest, but Lightning Rod has that nice momentum coming off the launched lift and the first mini hill before that big drop where it hits the top speed of 73 miles per hour. It's a terrific drop that gets overlooked because of all the other great elements that come after. The second con is the shakiness through its course. If I had just ridden this in 2016, this would not have been an issue, but just like the other RMC topper track wooden coasters, Lightning Rod's age is starting to show. It's such an aggressive coaster that it takes a toll on the track. We think of RMC as building these smooth, twisted masterpieces, but their topper track is not that much different than any other traditional wooden coaster from GCI or the Gravity Group. I wouldn't call Lightning Rod rough by any stretch of the imagination, and it's definitely marathonable. It shouldn't be compared with the way an old Din or an old CCI coaster could beat you up. But just like Outlaw Run, There are parts of the track that will suddenly shake, and the biggest problem with this is that it'll push the lap bar down as far as it'll go. I think Lightning Rod is an overall smoother ride than Ghost Rider, which I consider an extremely smooth wooden coaster. But there's something about these RMC topper track coasters where it shakes and staples you that really hurts the airtime. A non-RMC coaster that also does this is the Gravity Group Ravine Flyer 2 at Waldameer. And Lightning Rod has a ton of great airtime moments that I haven't discussed yet, and these are hurt by the shaky spots pushing down the lap bar. The third pro is the Quad Down Finale. I love when a ride finishes strong, and frankly, there aren't too many coasters that do it. This is usually because the ride is losing steam by the end, so the best elements are often taken at the top speed. Lightning Rod is different. Its terrain setting could also be a pro of its own, but I'm gonna work that into this pro, this spectacular finale. The same hill that supports the launch lift hill is also the hill that the coaster needs to climb back over to make its way back into the station. RMC decided to zigzag the track down this hill, providing rapid-fire ejector airtime all the way down. There are 4 of these transitions, hence why they call it the Quad Down. There are other coasters that finish strong with a series of airtime hills, like Steel Vengeance, Lightning Run, and Boulder Dash, but these are more traditional hills. There's an up and a down. With Lightning Rod, there's a tiny up and a big down, and that makes this element so unique. It doesn't need to pop up in order to go down because it's already careening down a hill, so there's practically no time between each airtime moment. It's crazy. The third con is also related to that Quad Down, and that is that the airtime is not sustained. People absolutely rave about the Quad Down and say it's the best airtime of all time, and any other opinion is false. It's good, as I described in my previous pro, and I appreciate how unique it is compared to any other airtime moment I've experienced, but I'm not the biggest fan of quick pops of airtime. Most people seem to agree on this point when it comes to speed hills, like the ones after the first drops on Twisted Colossus and Steel Vengeance. They're good, but forgettable. The Quad Down has 4 of these taken back to back, which is cool, but it's still not my favorite kind of airtime, so I rank the Quad Down 8th on my list of favorite airtime moments. Even though they're more drawn out, I prefer the back-to-back-to-back sustained airtime moments you'll find on Twisted Timbers. I'm not complaining about the Quad Down, but I think it's overrated and it's nowhere near the best airtime moments out there. The 4th pro is the wave turn after the first drop. My first ride on Lightning Rod was something I'll never forget. It was just a stunning experience. It had elements I'd never experienced before, and one of those is the wave turn. I had no idea that you could get airtime on an element like this, but there I was, absolutely ejected out of my seat while at that 90-degree angle. I guess Twisted Colossus has the first wave turn on the Blue High 5, and I did ride that a year before Lightning Rod, but I don't really get any kind of airtime on that element. I've been through a few wave turns since, and it's become one of my favorite elements, and it has been adopted by different manufacturers. Twisted Cyclone is another RMC that has an awesome pure wave turn. Premier Rides tried their hand with the wave turn with West Coast Racers, which produced one of the most insane moments of airtime I've ever experienced. And even B&M got in on the fun with Orion at Kings Island for 2020. This thing is huge and awesome, and it's a great first element to throw at its riders after the first drop. The 4th and final con is the reliability problems this coaster has had since the start. Just like with any innovative ride, there were delays and there is downtime. This is to be expected, and it's hard to get mad at, but it still makes for a frustrating time when planning a trip to go to Dollywood. I had an incredibly stressful time in 2016, looking at Screamscape on a daily basis, looking for any news on Lightning Rod. I was about to drive 5 hours out of the way to get to Dollywood specifically for Lightning Rod, and after 2 months of delays, it was not looking good. I got that one ride, and I was extremely thankful for it. On that first day, after we rode everything else in the park a few times, we went back to Lightning Rod and sat in the station for over 2 hours, just waiting for the mechanics to fix it so we can get that second ride. And finally they announced that it would not reopen for the rest of the night. I left for my cross-country trip in 2018 fully expecting to get that second ride 2 years after my first one. But while I was on the road, about 10 days before my Dollywood day, I found out the ride had been down for a couple weeks, and it ended up being down for most of the summer that year, finally reopening in October. It looks like they finally started to figure it out in 2019, and I was still stressing out over it when I came back in April, but it ran pretty consistently the day I was there. An incline launch on a wooden coaster is truly revolutionary, and the downtime is the price that we all have to pay for such an innovative coaster. I complained about the weekend launch, but it seems like that may have made the ride run more consistently, and I would rather have a neutered lightning rod than no lightning rod at all. And through it all, it has maintained its spot within my top 5. Some coasters have been open for over a decade and still haven't figured out how to stay open consistently. So over the next several years, we'll see how the future shakes out for lightning rod and its launched lift hill. The fifth and final pro are the twist and shout elements. I don't know why it took coaster manufacturers so long to figure out the benefits of an outward banked element. I guess it's just because it's unnatural to bank the track the opposite direction that the coaster is turning, but it creates a sensation that's second to none. On a large scale, there's nothing better. My favorite element of all time is the giant outward banked hill on Steel Vengeance, and we're about to get one that looks even crazier on Pantheon. So Intamin has definitely figured out this secret. Lightning Rod has 2 of these elements, and they're taken back to back. The first one is good, and the second one is even better. That outward banking moment while the train is going in the opposite direction gives you automatic airtime. And if the train is diving down at the same time, you'll be ejected for even longer. Because the twist and shout elements occur on Lightning Rod while it's climbing back up the hill working up to the quad down, it doesn't get that awesome sustained feeling that you get on Steel Vengeance, or what we're about to experience on Pantheon. But this was the best thing that they could have done while climbing up that hill, miles ahead of a simple step up or a double up. Now, if they only had this outward banking motion on the quad down, that would be something else. But hey, I can dream, right? So that's a wrap for Lightning Rod's pros and cons. For all my complaining, it's still a top 5 coaster for me, even if it disappointed me a little on my last few rides. The slowed down launch and the shakiness really stood out to me this time, but I can't place rides like Diamondback or Twisted Colossus above it just yet, so it's still my number 5. But before 2019, I thought that finally rewriting it could launch it back into my top 3, and now I think it'll never get higher than number 5. So let me know what you think of Lightning Rod. If you rode it after it opened and then again more recently, let me know if you agree with my comparison of how it was versus how it is now. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys all next time.